So the Virsto for VMware product was first released in January of this year. The first product was a very specific workflow outside of or alongside of the standard VMware workflow. So it was all custom wizards that the only way you could access the Virsto data store was with Virsto wizards. We've now integrated all the standard workflows into the VMware workflow, into the standard VMware tools, so standard VMware menu items, all that sort of process. We still have Virsto unique wizards where we can provide unique value that the VMware tools can't provide. So I'll run you through both of those. But with the 2.0 release, we've really gone from a product which was focused on specialized use VDI through to a data center ready product. We've got a fully automatic HA infrastructure built that has, we do much of our own HA control within the product. And we've got transparently showing alerting, utilization, all those sorts of things using the standard vSphere tools. We're not just another vCenter tab. We are not some third-party management tool just plunked into a tab within vCenter server, within the vSphere client. We have been designed from the ground up to look and feel and behave like the rest of the vSphere client. So the vSphere administrator is comfortable using Virsto. The vSphere administrator becomes the storage administrator. The vSphere administrator can use Virsto from day one without training.
But
it really is that simple.
You are just another vSphere tab because VMware won't let anybody actually integrate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly true. And in the 2.0 release, we've added.
Sorry, that's my biggest criticism of vSphere. Yeah.
Hey, try adding a tab to Virtual Machine Manager in System Center. It's worse.
Is it? Yeah.
The vSphere APIs are fantastic, but they're not quite enough. We have to jump through hoops to do what we do. We still have to go through custom wizards because there just aren't the integration points we'd love. However, things are improving with every release. We certainly have made a great deal of progress. We can do much of what we need to do today with the existing infrastructure. With the 2.0 release, we've added Zen desktop support. So we're leveraging the Virsto space-efficient, high performance snapshots and clones. We hand those over to VMware View for ongoing management, and now we can hand them over to Zen Desktop for ongoing management. So the same workflow applies to both of those brokers. So this is the Virsto tab, and you'll see that we have just an overview of this is a 2-node cluster. We have some infrastructure machines, which are the Virsto infrastructure machines. We have a global namespace server. We have a VSA that runs on each host. That host allows us to present a single Virsto data store across the cluster, presenting through a local VSA on each host. So we're using host local connections to provide that global data store. And we have a management server that is part of the Virsto infrastructure. On the storage side, we support multiple tiers. In this particular example, we have 4 tiers. We have a SSD tier and 3 other tiers. And we'll be using a couple of those tiers today. These are the VSAs running on each host, and with the virtual machines display now to use some of the Virsto wizards. So over here we could go to infrastructure, we could pick these same VMs, we could use the Virsto right mouse menu item.
So much more than a tab.
So much more than a tab. We have right click menus too, thank you. And we can go and clone virtual machines from this place. We could, in fact, also, using the standard VMware operations, clone the virtual machine from this place. This will generate a full copy of the virtual machine using the same process that VMware uses for everything else. The Virsto clone utility or clone wizard will take a Virsto snapshot and create a virtual machine, which is basically an empty usage of space very rapidly, which you'll be able to operate as a separate machine, but it does so extremely fast. Think of it like link clones without any penalty. The same behavior as link clones, but without any performance penalty. same space behavings as link clones without any performance penalty. However, over here, I'm going to skip through the single clone case and demonstrate one of the things we do provide in a unique value add. This is useful for both VDI, but also for server farms. We have customers using this for SQL Server farms, web farms, all those sorts of things. I'm going to take that VM, I'm going to create, in this case, let me create 20 machines. I'm going to call it and I'm going to place it under view. Just let me run through this wizard. This looks like a pretty standard workflow. The only thing that's really been different is the number of machines we created. We've got the ability here to be quite flexible in where we place the various resources of our virtual machine in this group. So I can choose to place the C drive, in this case, on the SSD tier, and I could place the D drive on say, the C tier, the third tier. We have a couple of different options for customizing these machines. So we're going to create 20 independent machines from one base. Clearly, we have to go through a customization process. We could use full customization. Like VMware provides quick prep, we provide an analog to quick prep we call fast prep, which runs through a similar process, but essentially under the covers it's doing a computer name change and add to a domain. And so we can take an existing machine and quickly make that machine an independent entity. So that's what I'm going to use today.
Do you use stored credentials for that?
Sorry?
Oh.
There we go.
Sorry.
Wait for it. Stay on target. 1,000 points of light.
Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be rude.
There's no shortcut to typing, I'm afraid, so just bear with me.
But if you use the standard clone disk semantics, don't you guys through VAAI use the same snapshot mechanism?
So the VAI NAS, which is not in this release, it's in the next release, but the VAI NAS does not support taking a Virsto snapshot. It doesn't offload snapshots using the snapshot calls in vSphere APIs. What it does do is it says, I want a copy of this VM. If you can do it effectively on the array, we'll let you do it for us. So under the covers, what that does is we say, we take our own snapshot, create a clone of the machine, and return that back as an independent copy. So yes, we can do the same thing, but this is a different process which says, I have one machine, I don't want to copy 20 machines, one machine at a time. I want to create a whole farm of 20 machines in one hit.
Right. No,
So
I understand. I'm just so it's the next version of Virsto when
the next version of Virsto will have the integration with VAI NAS, yes.
okay.
So should I
For when you just gotta do it one at a time.
Yeah.
For when I just have to give it to people and don't have the time to train them.
So would it be safe to assume that that's Windows only for Windows guests, and that you're not using like Centrify or something on Linux to authenticate?
We use, yeah, that's correct for now, yeah.
For now, okay. You're looking at maybe setting up Linux automated.
We can use the same process here with Linux, but we're handling all this under the covers ourselves at the moment.
Okay, gotcha.
So let's take a look at what happened there. We took that one machine and we said, I want to have 20 copies. So we've gone and taken the disks that underpin that virtual machine. We've created internally what's called a disk clone group, a Virsto disk clone group, a vDisk clone group. And then we've packaged VMs around each of those disks in the clone group. And we've fired those off a bunch of machines at a time. So you can see here we're scheduling the creation of each of these machines. We're running, I think, eight VM creations at a time in parallel. So we're just going to run through that group. We started creating those 20 machines. Where was it? What time was it? I'll wait till it finishes. Come back here.
It's going too fast.
It's going, yeah, Virsto is just so fast, it's awesome. What can I say? So we started at 5:09, and in a moment we'll see how long it took to create 20 machines.
What's the performance impact on the cluster nodes?
So there's no data copying happening here at all. So we've got one set of blocks and we're saying, take a snapshot. There is no new data. There's nothing been written. So the per VM files are empty. And we've created a new empty VM and attached this to it. So the only thing we're doing is we're throwing a bunch of operations at the vCenter server. In this particular case, we are limited, the thing which limits our performance is the vCenter server, the vSphere APIs. There is no impact on the storage at all during this operation. So cloning these are two 32 gig disks on each of the VMs. If you're going to do a full clone, you'd be waiting around, you'd have to go and grab a few cups of coffee per machine, and we're doing 20 of them. And this whole process, including customization, well, if we just look at the copy process, when the fast prep started? Down here somewhere. The fast prep started here. So in 35 seconds, sorry, we created 20 machines that were ready for customization. That's 20 64 gig VMs ready to customize in 35 seconds. So now we're going through the customization process.
Each VM is actually just a string of metadata that says that all of my blocks, all the blocks that represent this VMDK are the same blocks that represent this VMDK.
Right.
So all you're doing is creating that metadata. It might be 2 or 3 megabytes of actual read-write to create the metadata.
It's actually it's tens of Ks actually is all it is.
And as you now fire that machine up and start writing to it, the blocks that are going to be different from the source are going to point to new blocks, and so the metadata pointers are going to get updated. So there's actually more work going on to update the vCenter database than there is to create the VMDKs.
So if you're familiar with...
Now, Tintry does almost exactly the same thing.
If you're familiar with VMware View Composer, think of these as link clones without redo files, without logs, copy on write logs. And so it really is literally, all we're creating is a VMX file, a couple of other small little files, and an entry in our database which says there's a new vDisk that has this parent, and there is literally no more I/O than that.
It's the same way NetApp does it, right?
Similar, except that at the end of the day, for one level of snapshot, it looks very, very similar, behaves very, very similar. We have an advantage when you start stacking up snapshots on top of each other. So we're just waiting for this fast prep process to finish. You can see that we're busy adding machines to the domain. We have 3 VMs ready for use right now. The rest will be ready quite soon. In the meantime, I guess we could take a look at the storage. Actually, let's take a look at some of the machines that do exist. I can go through and show you this whole entire group. How we've provisioned thus far, we've provisioned 670 gig of storage, but we've only used 9 gig of storage. That 9 gig of storage is almost all associated with the VMs that are powered up and the memory files associated with each of those VMs, because there's very little data. As each of the machines powers up and starts to run, you will have per virtual machine I/O. You'll have a new page file, you'll have some system configuration files, a registry's been updated, all those sorts of things. So there will be a small amount of unique data per VM. Once this process finishes and everything's powered down, you'll see that a typical Windows 7 desktop like these guys, it'll be about 1.7 gig per desktop is what we see of unique data out of a 64 gig machine. You also notice that we have this group, we're referring to this clone group as one entry in our display here. There are a bunch of operations we allow we treat this group like a first-class entity. Well, it's almost a first-class entity. So there are many operations you can do full group operations on. Once this is finished, you could power these all on as a group. You could shut them down as a group. You could reset them as a group. You could take a snapshot of all the machines in the group. You can revert to a snapshot with all the machines in the group. And so This is especially useful if you've got a farm of machines and you want to take a snapshot, try something new on the whole farm. That didn't work out. Revert the snapshot of the whole group at once, and you're back to running as you were immediately prior to the snapshot. Any questions so far? So if we just go to the, I guess what we can do is we can go to the data store and clusters view and just see that the Virsto data store just looks like the average data store. It's presented as a NFS data store. It looks like NFS, looks like a single NFS data store. It's visible to all the machines in the cluster, but remember each one of those machines is talking to its own private storage appliance and has its own log device. So we have this presentation layer which makes it look like a standard NFS data store to ESX. And so we can vMotion, storage vMotion on and off, everything works, all the standard processes that work on any NFS data store will work with Virsto.
You just saw a solution that was doing something similar. Are you using like the same local IP on all of the different VMs so that they all talk to the same?
Correct, we have a local host connection. Each of those VSAs has the same IP address, so that it just makes vMotion so much easier. So we're about 2/3 of the way through this process.
You couldn't show us the networking.
Sure, absolutely.
We couldn't see it there.
So this is the Virsto host kernel port, and this is the private NAS network that we use. So this is the IP address of the NFS server for each of the machines.
It's completely virtual, no adapter, so it's just for internal communication.
Correct.
Right.
So even though there's an extra, one of the arguments is, well, okay, you're doing extra hop. You're going over an extra IP hop compared to talking straight to an NFS server. Well, okay, what you're talking about is a local host connection without going over any adapter. So you're adding, let's call it 70 or 80 microseconds, in fact, measured to be under 80 microseconds. And yet by transforming random IO to sequential IO, what was hundreds of, what was tens of milliseconds, you can get down to single-digit milliseconds by transforming random I/O to sequential I/O. 79 microseconds is completely within the noise. So that even though there is an extra hop, the penalty is totally insignificant and way underwhelmed by the benefits.
Thank you for that.
No problem.
You have to wait for the little red light at the highway entrance, but then you get to go 5,000 miles an hour.
Exactly.
That's true, if you're not going to be out that long.
So to support the discussion we had before about storage and the ease of use of storage, we only have one LUN here. So here we actually have two LUNs. So what we've done is we've made the intersection between the storage admin and the vSphere admin so much easier. What we've done is say, at the time you deploy Virsto, Mr. Storage Admin, just give me one configuration of LUNs. Just give me RAID 5 or RAID 6. I'll take them all. I'll worry about free space management. I'll worry about the creation and deletion of VMDKs. The VM itself is the first class entity. We're VM centric. So what does that mean? It means when we create a VM, we create the storage entity. When we delete the VM, we delete the storage entity. There is no need to go and say, well, I need to have a new data store. I need to manage free space on 5 data stores. I've got different types of LUNs underpinning different data stores. I need to match my application to my data store. None of that is necessary with Virsto. You give us one class of RAID 5 or RAID 6 LUN per tier, and we take care of all the space management and all the performance management on a VM per VM basis. So that means the touch points between the vSphere admin and the storage admin are only at initial provision time or at expansion time. which removes the biggest point of contention in trying to diagnose things like performance problems, where you've got a mismatch between what the storage admin has provided the vSphere admin and what the vSphere admin requires from the VMs. We've taken that away. Okay, so where are we here? This display is a bit strange in the size. Let me just see if I can. I've lost this guy, hang on.
The peril of demos.
There we go. So this is still running away here.
Needs a really good HD, 10,000 lumen projector.
For $27.95.
Yes.
Yes.
Just the biggest technology lacking.
You're right on that, man.
Let's see what I can do.
Thank you very much.
It would involve lasers of doom. Is that a problem?
You could use sharks.
I think I would have to do something besides, a flimsy pull down kind of jump onto like reflectors.
You don't want the screen to burst into flames?
Well, it's more like I don't want to cut through the wall behind it.
That would have a lot more lumens.
What, if the
This
screen
one
was
is-
flaming?
Well, if
Yeah.
light gives you lumens.
This
Yep,
one's
make luminate, that's
unreadable.
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, so the customization has completed.
No.
So you'll note that we got 20 machines, which has a total provision space of 1.29 terabytes, of which we've actually used 24 megabytes. So
That's pretty thin.
which is pretty thin. And if we go to the storage tab, you'll see that we have an over provision ratio here, or over commit ratio of 1.5 to 1.
Yeah.
So we can then take this whole group and we could power them on as a single entity. We could take
Defrag them.
a snapshot of the entire group, or in fact what we're going to display here is handing this group over to view. So now I'm going to run through. And to avoid typing, I'm going to shortcut this. Okay. The demo gods are being nasty to me.
They're jerks.
We're up and running. I'm going to try that one again, so bear with me. We can also do entitlements during the same process. So I'm just going to go with a predefined group that we've added in the Active Directory machine and hand those over. So now if we go across to the View Manager, we'll see that we will have a new pool created. And in that pool, I'll take a look at the inventory of machines. Those machines have now been added. And let's just wait for those to go. I might actually change some of the settings here just for kicks. So you'll see that we have a dedicated assignment manual pool. And we'll go back to inventory. So this will fire up all the machines. We'll go back across to vCenter server. You'll see that the machines now have been reconfigured by vCenter at the request of the view controller. So all these tasks are happening in the vCenter server. And back here, we'll start to see these guys appear in a few moments. These guys are starting to power up at the request of View Manager. So we didn't do any power actions over here. This is View controlling all this. Almost done, yeah. Just waiting for a desktop. The perils of using QA systems for demos. Well, this is a release candidate for the 2.0, so.
If it makes you feel any better, every demo at Networking Field Day failed spectacularly in some cases, so.
This hasn't been nearly as exciting.
It's just to take a little bit. That's a win in my book.
It saves me the trouble of getting up there and saying, okay, it took a little bit of time, but given what we did and the underlying rapid message which caused everything else happened, this is still doing pretty well.
Yep.
Thank you for the kind words of camaraderie, though.
We've all been there.
Yes.
It could be worse.
So we could swing back to this later if you like.
Okay.
So just as a point of comparison, if you were doing this with full clones, if you needed performance out of these desktops, so this is the equivalent performance to thickly provisioned full clones. If you're going to do it that way, and you weren't going to have to use some exotic storage technology to get good performant VMs, this process would have taken you a day to copy 20, 64 gigabyte
First
machines.
and last stop.
Correct. Right. So these are still booting, but we can come back to that later if you wish.
Please.